afternoon. I'm David Van Slyke, the Dean of the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs here at Syracuse University. It's my privilege to welcome you to the fall 2016 edition of our Tanner Lecture Series. Up front, I'd like to especially thank the many Maxwell Advisory Board members in attendance. I'd like to thank the Mayor and Jack Mannion for joining us, Bethany Wallawender and Kelly Coleman from the Dean's Office and the Campbell Public Affairs Institute, Stan Ziemba and Tom Fazio and their team from the Maxwell Information and Computing Technology Department, the external staff, affairs staff of the Maxwell School, and the generous and hospitable staff of Syracuse University Catering. I'd like to acknowledge with respect the Onondaga Nation, the indigenous people upon whose ancestral lands we now gather. We are forever grateful to Maxwell Graduate and Advisory Board member Dr. Lynn Tanner, Lynn, thank you, who has generously endowed this very special lecture series that benefits our students, our faculty, our university, and our community. Lynn has built an extraordinary career spanning education and the private sector. For 30 years, he's been involved with leading and expanding Tech Canada, where he serves as president. Lynn has done remarkable work accelerating the growth, development, and success of 21st century business leaders throughout Canada and around the world. He is deeply committed to public service and educating the next generation of leaders. And I especially thank Lynn and his wife, Margaret Graw, for their generous and thoughtful counsel and that they continue to provide to myself and to the Maxwell School. Since 2012, the Tanner Lectures have provided Maxwell the opportunity to bring some of the most prominent civic doers and thinkers of our time to visit campus and speak on issues of ethics, citizenship, and public responsibility. Previous speakers, including Senator Bill Bradley, Governor Lincoln Chafee, Maxwell alum and CEO of the Clinton Foundation, Donna Shalala, and Secretary Madeleine Albright, have entertained, engaged, and challenged us. I have no doubt that today's distinguished speaker will do the same. I am particularly delighted regarding the topic of Mayor Neller's talk, the Athenian Oath and Political Leadership in America. The Athenian Oath has deep meaning to me personally and to our school. I've been the dean for just over 3 months, but I came to Syracuse as a faculty member more than 12 years ago. One of the many reasons I chose Syracuse University and the Maxwell School was the commitment to the Athenian Oath, which I suspect you know is carved just outside on the wall outside the historic auditorium. As a young faculty member back in 2004 and as dean today, I'm inspired to work hard every day for a school, the nation's first school of citizenship and public affairs, where faculty, students, and staff at the graduate and undergraduate and professional levels are dedicated to transmitting the city not only not less, but greater, better, and more beautiful than it was transmitted to us. There is no doubt that the Maxwell School is known for its outstanding faculty. Among our more than 160 teachers and scholars, we are fortunate to enjoy the remarkable service and leadership of Dr. Grant Rear. Grant is a graduate of Dartmouth College and earned his PhD from Yale University. He's a professor of political science and director of the Campbell Public Affairs Institute. Many of you may also know Grant as the creator, host, and producer of the Campbell Conversations on WRVO Public Media, an award-winning regional NPR public affairs show featuring in-depth interviews with regional and national writers, politicians, activists, public officials, and business professionals. Few people that I know are as knowledgeable of or as passionate and thoughtful about public service and citizenship than our distinguished colleague, Grant Rear. And it is an honor to introduce him to you, and I look forward to him leading this afternoon's event. Grant?
You can find in your brochure that you got on the way in many of Michael Nutter's impressive accomplishments, awards, and recognitions as the mayor of Philadelphia, one of Esquire's Americans of the Year, Governing Magazine's Public Officials of the Year, President of the United States Conference of Mayors. But what put the mayor on our radar screen as a Tanner lecturer was arguably more the motivation than the results. And the oath of the Athenian state, which Dave just talked about to you, is something that deeply informs Michael Nutter, so much so that he had it printed on the back of his own business card when he served as mayor. And that makes him a perfect choice to deliver this Tanner lecture on ethics, citizenship, and public responsibility. And Lynn Tanner has been equally inspired by the oath. And in thinking about that, I was reminded of a piece that the columnist Sean Kirst wrote about the oath a couple years ago on the occasion of the Maxwell School's 90th anniversary. Kirst was in the foyer just outside and looking at the oath, and he described a scene of students working on laptops and reading books while different alums made what he characterized as pilgrimages to the wall, including James Willey, who's here with us today. And then Lynn Tanner came along, and with him a conversation about the oath that Kirst related as follows, and what he described as a quiet visit. Lynn told him, "It's a call to think about what it means to be a citizen of your nation or a citizen of the world. Do you understand the gift of living in a place that offers you security and safety, the opportunity to acquire wealth, a chance to follow your dreams, to believe what you want to believe without fear of retribution?" At Maxwell, the message offers a constant challenge for young people to take on the fight, to spend a lifetime attempting to lift up the world around them. Now, the only thing about that, which didn't seem quite right to me, was the notion that it was a quiet visit. And I've not known Lynn to be quiet about that oath or its importance. And so as it happened, I crossed paths with Sean a few weeks later, and I asked him about that. And he said, well, it was kind of true. He said he quietly grabbed me and took me to the oath and said, look at this, it's important. And Michael Nutter deeply appreciates that importance too. And he also appreciates the challenge of leadership, which he'll be speaking about today. As the mayor of a large city, he shared something important with our presidents of the United States, that there are a myriad of seemingly intractable problems confronting you, that people expect you to fix those problems, and that they'll hold you responsible for fixing them, even if they're beyond your control. And that would seem like an impossible combination. But again, if you look at his record, it seems clear that Mayor Nutter held up his end of the oath and then some. He transmitted Philadelphia much better than he found it. And so I'm particularly keen to hear from him about how this is done. Mayor Nutter, welcome to the Maxwell School.
Good afternoon, everyone, and Grant, thank you very, very much for that introduction. I was just really sitting there enjoying hearing you talk about me, so I was going to leave. It was enjoyable. Dean Van Slyke, thank you for this opportunity, of course, to be here at Syracuse University and the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs. I think I have the opportunity to meet Chancellor later on this evening, but I did have an opportunity to sit with, just for a few minutes, Dr. Lynn Tanner. And again, I want to thank him for his leadership, for his foresight, and for caring enough to create such a lecture series that the other individuals who have been here, much greater than myself, had the opportunity to spend some time with all of you, and I deeply appreciate that. At the same time, I want to thank Margaret Graw for her leadership and partnership in this work. I've always tried to make it clear that when people take on leadership roles and responsibilities, they certainly, in most instances, don't take on those responsibilities by themselves. They usually have, at least they're a partner or a friend or someone who works very closely with them. And the same is true certainly for public employees. And so I always made it my practice to recognize not only if there was a person who had done something in particular, but also the family serves at the same time. And so let us please recognize this partnership of Dr. Lynn and Margaret. I want to thank the faculty and students that I had an opportunity to talk with. Earlier today, I had a bit of lunch with the faculty and a little bit of dessert with the students, but the conversations were both very exciting and invigorating, and I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you as well. As I peeked in the door, I saw that at least over on this side, and I didn't get a chance to really scan the entire room, but I also see at least 2 members of our military here in the audience, maybe a third right up there. Can we please recognize those who are serving our nation? It is because of your service that people like me get to serve in the capacity that I do, that all of us get to do the things that we do, and in many instances don't have to worry about a whole bunch of things because you all are on the front lines and you're worrying about them for us. And so I greatly appreciate those who serve in the military, who serve in the uniform, police, fire, first responders, making sure that all of us are safe. My very good friend, Mayor Stephanie Miner, is here, and her, I don't know him as well, so I won't say the lesser, but at least the other half. Jack, if I knew you better, I'd make a better joke, but I don't. Your name and reputation, of course, precedes you, and I thank you for your hard work and service to our nation. But to Stephanie, a star in our conference. I am no longer a member, of course, because I'm not in office of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, but I had the honor and privilege to serve, presidents get to serve a 1-year term in the conference, and I got to know Stephanie through the U.S. Conference of Mayors. She is highly regarded in the conference. When she has something to say, people listen, and I chose my words very carefully. There are some who have nothing to say and say it anyway, and Stephanie picks her moments. People know that she is a serious person, and she's doing a great job here in Syracuse. Please recognize Mayor Miner. Stephanie, I want to let you know that I am recovering as a former mayor. There's a whole process that you go through. You have many, many years to go, but I thought I'd share this slice of life in a post-mayoral environment. I happen to teach at another public policy school in the state of New York, in the city of New York, and obviously you can read my bio that it's Columbia University. And I am the inaugural David N. Dinkins Professor of Practice in Urban and Public Affairs. That started earlier this year, and I'm very pleased and honored, and certainly many of us know and respect the great work of Mayor Dinkins, and I've been a fan of his for a long time. But shortly after I started, and I did not start at the beginning of the semester because I had just come out of office in January, I needed a little bit of a break, and so the dean let me teach a short course about 5 weeks right after spring break. And you know, when I was in office, I mean, Philadelphia is the 5th largest city in the United States of America, founding city of our nation, pretty prominent and important city in the country. And there's a certain amount of, put me aside, a certain amount of prestige that comes with being the mayor of Philadelphia. And you have thousands of public employees and 6,500 police officers, and you have a security detail, because, I mean, unlike here in Syracuse where everyone agrees with everything that Mayor Miner does, Philadelphians, we have a little bit of an attitude, and, they're not shy about sharing it, and so, you know, you have a security detail right around a big SUV, which I paid for. So that's how I went about my day-to-day business, had this big schedule, and we'd move around town, and every now and then, if you can believe it, you know, you might be a little late, so a little bit of lights and sirens just to, you know, kind of move you around. We didn't abuse it, but, you know, that had been my life for 8 years. And so trying to leave Columbia to go to Penn Station, of course, I called Uber, and I was running a little behind. I was trying to, my class ended at 4. I was trying to catch the 5 o'clock train. And so the device buzzes, the Uber is coming. I rush out of the building. A car is sitting right there. And I'd been traveling, so I had an overnight bag with me. I was coming in from somewhere else. And we proceed. We get about a block and a half, and the guy gets a phone call, and I hear a woman's voice over the speaker, and she says, "Where are you?" And he says, "Well, I'm on," and then he realizes, I got in the wrong Uber. And so he turns around. He has no idea. I mean, it doesn't matter, but he has no idea who I am. And he turns to me and he says, "Well, you know, like, you have to get out because I have the wrong person." Fine. Fair. My mistake. I get out. I'm standing on the sidewalk. And then I said, "Well, let me find the person who's coming to get me." And I call the number. And he says, "Well, where are you?" And I said, "I don't know." Because I was in the middle of the block in New York, and I had no idea where I was. And so he said, "Well, I can't come and get you because you can't tell me where you are." So I said, "All right, fine." So I walked to the end of the block, and I realized now I'm at 110th and Columbia Avenue. And for a moment, I stood there and I said, you know, 4 months ago, I commanded thousands of people. I had a security detail. They picked me up at the door. They delivered me to the next place that I was going to. But today, I am just a guy standing on the corner of 110th and Columbus, and not one person out here gives one damn who I am. Let me call Uber back. So that's what it means to be out of office, at least in Philadelphia. When Grant got in touch with me, which was actually early on in my time at Columbia, it took me a while to figure out how people were actually getting in touch with me until someone explained to me that when you become a professor, they put your email address up on the school's website. So, you know, when I was mayor, I had like a email address, like my personal government email address. 2 devices. No server in the house. But I had city employees had my real email address. And then there was a michael.nutter@phila.gov email address, which is where, you know, citizens sent stuff in and somebody monitored that and they could kind of, you know, get in touch with me. And so I was not used to this, you know, kind of your real email address is out and people can get in touch with you. So in February, he sent me a note and back and forth and all of that, and so we arrived here today. So Grant, for your persistence and ability to find my email address, thank you very, very much. Please give Grant another big round of applause. The topic today, of course, is the Athenian Oath and political leadership, and it is in fact true. As Samuel L. Jackson says, you know, what's in your wallet? So this is, we have tons of these. City government, if we didn't have pens and paper sometime, but we always had business cards. I have boxes and boxes and boxes of these business cards with nothing to do with them now, because I can't give them out because I'm not the mayor anymore. But anyway, it really is true. I did have the Athenian Oath printed on the back of my cards and used that, quite honestly, as my guiding star for trying to be a good public servant. I will not, and some of the younger folks in the room may not remember Admiral James Stockdale and his incredible opening in the 1992 vice presidential debate. You can Google that. and find out about it. But some may wonder, beyond the resume, who is this guy and why is he here at our school? And so I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself, how I came into public service, and why I did what I did, and why I do what I do, and why I love public service. My story starts, maybe uncharacteristically, it all started at a nightclub. So when I was undergraduate at University of Pennsylvania, attended high school at St. Joseph's Preparatory High School, a Jesuit high school in Philadelphia. My best friend in high school, who's still my best friend today, we went to Penn together, and his father owned a couple bars and a nightclub. And in the early to mid-'70s, the disco wave was coming to America from Europe. He had traveled a fair amount and decided to close one of his clubs and turn it into a discotheque. And it was the first black-owned discotheque in the city of Philadelphia. Summer of 1976, I was 19 years old, and I started working there. And through working there, which was not my goal in college, I actually wanted to be a doctor. I'll get to that in a second. But I met a tremendous number of people in the political community who were having events and fundraisers and activities at this particular club. Late 60s into the 70s was a rising movement for black political empowerment in Philadelphia. And so some of the stars and rising stars of the time I was getting to meet and see pretty up close and personal at this nightclub when I was 19 years old. My original road when I went to Penn was to be a doctor. I wanted to help people. I did not necessarily want to be a physician. My plan actually was to become a doctor, open a company to make and sell medical equipment and devices. I've always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial sense about myself, but the theory was, for me, that you had to understand medicine and to be able to talk to people in the medical community to do this well and do it right. And so that was the path I chose. I was a biomedical engineering major in the School of Engineering at the University of Pennsylvania. Chemistry 3 changed my life forever. And it was very clear in that first semester of my freshman year that I was not going to become a doctor, and made the very, very quick decision that I needed to find a new major and a new school, not the engineering school, but another school within the university. Through a very long, tortuous path, I did eventually graduate from the Wharton School of Business with a Bachelor of Science in Economics as an entrepreneurial management major. And the world of medicine and doctoring was way off of the path. But public service was not on the path either. I was not one of these, when you're 10 years old, what do you want to be? I was not thinking about being a city council member or the mayor or anything like that. When I was 10 years old, I was probably trying to figure out how to get some more G.I. Joes or something like that, go roller skating. But through this experience of seeing these elected officials, public servants, politicians over the years, I became inquisitive and started asking some questions about who they were and what they did, and I read about them in the paper, graduated from Penn, went on to work at Xerox Corporation in Center City, Philadelphia, after graduating in 1979. I left Xerox after 21 months because I felt that if they could not figure out that I should have been at least a senior vice president at the age of 24, that I had no future at that company, and resigned. I was still working at the nightclub while I was working at Xerox, so I had two full-time jobs. But that experience led me to have more time and daytime hours, free time, to volunteer in the office of a city council member who I met through the nightclub experience. And that volunteer work then led to working on a campaign in 1983 when the movement had gotten to the point of actually possibly being able to elect the first African-American mayor of the city of Philadelphia. And so the '83 election was W. Wilson Goode against Frank Rizzo, who had been a tremendously polarizing person in his previous history as police commissioner and as mayor of the city of Philadelphia. In Philly, the mayor and the city council, all 17 members, run at the same time. So 1983 was a pretty exciting year politically. I was working with the city council member who was running for re-election at large, and Wilson Goode, of course, was running for mayor. My guy was in a race that had 57 candidates running for city council that particular year, and somehow, some way, notwithstanding my presence, came in first. I decided that night, in May of 1983, on election night, that this is the work that I wanted to do, that I wanted to devote my life to public service. I saw what Councilman Anderson was able to accomplish. I saw what people were pushing for to try to get Wilson Goode elected mayor, and the things that you could do and the lives that you could impact by being actively engaged in public service. And I was going down a path of elected office. And so that summer of '83, talking with my mentor, Councilman Anderson, we decided that I would run 4 years later, in 1987, for a district seat. And so Philadelphia has 17 council members, 10 represent districts, 7 are at large, they run citywide. So of course I would not get in the at-large race because I would be in competition with my mentor. That was the plan. 5 months after the election in May of 1983, my mentor died. And I learned some pretty serious lessons through that experience. I was 26 years old, mentor gone. Tons of people that I'd met through this process, many of whom afterwards had no need to ever talk to me or have conversation. And it was a pretty rough experience at the age of 26. But nonetheless, some people, some of his friends, true friends, stuck with me. And 4 years later, I did run for city council in 1987. Lost by 1,882 votes, but I don't really keep that close a track of what happened in that race. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but I would say to any of you who are thinking about running for office, and you probably won't appreciate it at the time either, because I'm pretty competitive, hate losing. But it was probably, all in all, the best thing that could have happened. A, I learned a great deal of things about myself. B, I learned a great deal of things about other people. And C, I learned what I should do and what I shouldn't do, because on election night I also announced that I was going to run again in 1991. Changed the political landscape to some extent, got more actively engaged in the process. I'd only knocked on 10,000 doors the first time I ran, and then knocked on 20,000 doors the second time. And so, successful in '91, 14 and a half years in city council, and then decided that I wanted to do more. Thought I had more to offer and to give. And so I decided that I would run for mayor. Now in Philly, we have a resign to run provision. If you're in office and run for any other office other than re-election, you have to resign. I took a poll while I was still in office in April of 2006. Now, people know about polling, and we've seen all these, I mean, these polls today are kind of crazy, we'll get to that, but back then anyway. So I picked a pollster, paid for a poll, we put a bunch of names in of people who were likely to run in the 2007 election. And my own poll told me that I would be last in a 5-way race no matter who ran. I said, well, I was on city council for 14 and a half years. I did ethics reform, I did campaign finance reform, I did the bill on smoke-free work areas. I mean, I was a pretty active legislator. Last in a 5-way race, no matter who ran. My own poll told me that in April of 2006. In June of 2006, I resigned from my city council position, and in July, I announced that I was running for mayor. To show you how tough politics is in Philly, they covered my announcement. I was the first announced candidate. And the press said he had been a great councilman, could have had a great career, probably fifth in a five-way race, and has no chance of winning. To which I said, I am the first announced candidate. I cannot lose to myself. I'm the only one running right now. But it's a full contact sport in Philly. Anyway, obviously things turned out well, at least for me, and took 37% of the vote in a five-way race with two members of Congress, a state rep who was an appropriations chair, and a first time we ever had a self-funded candidate who put $10 million of his own money in that election. I give you all that to just give you a little bit of a sense, because that's probably not in the bio part. I passionately care about this work, and I was raised right and I was groomed right by watching others do this work, not only locally, but tried to become a true student of politics. Wasn't too great a student in chemistry, but I was a really great student in politics. And what I saw in those who I admired was their commitment to people. It was not about power, it was about purpose. It was about getting things done, making things happen, trying to improve the lives of others, and utilizing the power and the authority and the position that you have been given, which is a gift, which you should appreciate, which you should treasure, which you should cherish, which you should protect. Because it's not just about you. It is about the people you represent, and it's about the office. So in Philadelphia, at least, the office of the mayor is the only elected office housed in that building that does not have the person's name on or at or near the door. It is an institution to be respected and protected. And so for me, the Athenian Oath, and every word in the Athenian Oath, I think is important. But it's always been for me that part right at the end. Thus, in all these ways, we will transmit this city not only, not less, but greater and more beautiful than it was transmitted to us. And I think that is a charge. That is a charge to every person who runs for office, who takes the oath, because in our oaths, and they may be different in different cities and different states, but for the most part, read the last line of the oaths of office that we take. And most of them usually say, "And I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity." That is a pact, that is a commitment, that is an agreement, that is a contract that you are making with and on behalf of the citizens that you wish to serve. Now, and I know the mayor knows this, sometimes you're not going to be as popular as you would like to be in this work. Because the reality is that what's popular is not always right, and what's right is not always popular. And I said earlier, but I will say to this audience, and if your goal, if you have a deep, desperate need to be loved and admired every day, this is not the business for you. You should work in a pet shop. You will make tough decisions. You will make decisions that no one likes, but that need to be made. You should find the best, smartest, competent, decent people that you can find and surround yourself with them. Lay out your vision and your charge and let them do their work and back them up every step along the way. And if you do that, they will knock down walls, they will move mountains, they will get stuff done with and for you because they believe in you. And it's not just the big public decisions that play out in the papers and on TV. Because it's a little easier to be upfront and honest and open and seeming to make the right decisions when the cameras are rolling. But there are all those decisions that don't always play out in the public or don't always have the immediate impact or don't always get implemented immediately. In those quiet moments, when you've had great debate around the table, your top 5 folks, your top 10 folks, whoever it is, and the conversation always winds its way ultimately back to you because you're in charge. And they're looking, and they're listening, and they're waiting. Because here's the politically expedient decision, and more oftentimes than not, here's the tough right decision. And what they're listening for and what they're looking for is, are you in fact committed to the same ideals that you came in with now, 3, 5, 7, 10 years later? There has to be a level of consistency in your decision making. Otherwise, you will destroy the integrity and the relationship you have built with those folks. And believe me, they watch and they listen. And they may not say anything because, you know, you're the boss and everybody wants to keep the boss happy or everybody wants to keep their job. But I can tell you, you know, there's the meeting before the meeting, and then there's the meeting, and then there's the meeting after the meeting, where your staff goes off and they say, did you hear what he said? Can you believe that? Well, we're not going to do that because that's crazy. The folks who actually really run the government. I mean, you know, you get title and all the prestige and all the grief, but there's actually a group of folks who actually run things, right? We get, not as much as you, but we get a little bit of snow in Philly. And so, you know, I'd be out. And you want to be out with the folks, and I've got my outfit on and all of that, and we'd go to a particular place, and the press would come, and, you know, I'd, like, shovel a little bit of somebody's sidewalk. And they would run that all day long. People thought that I was shoveling sidewalks all over the city of Philadelphia. I'd done it for like 3 minutes. I mean, I'm done with that shoveling thing. What people want to know is, are you here with us? Do you understand? There are 20 inches of snow out here. What are you doing? Well, what you're really doing out there is providing backup and support to the people who are really doing the work. Because when your workers are on those trucks for 12, 14, and 16-hour shifts trying to move that 20 inches of snow, from time to time they will wonder, well, what in the world is the mayor doing? Where's the mayor at? So you have to be out there with them. Those are the folks who are getting things done. I'm not moving snow, ma'am. That's not what I do. And I didn't pick up your trash this week either. That water main break, it's a really big hole with a really big busted up pipe. I couldn't fix that if my life depended on it. But there's some really smart people over in the water department who can hook you up. I'll get them out here for you. But it is about leadership. It's about the consistency of your leadership, the integrity of your decision making. And that, for me, is really what the Athenian Oath is about. But it's also about being truthful and honest with your constituents. Every day is not going to be a stroll in the park. We can do all the analysis, really smart people around, but every now and then, you know, you're just going to make the wrong call. Now, you can spend a whole lot of time, what we call back in Philly, lying, denying, and alibiing, explaining. And if you make a mistake, own up to it, accept it. You can explain why you made the mistake. You had the best of intentions, it just went haywire, and move on. When your people make a mistake, don't throw them under the bus. They could be wrong as the day is long. Why did you make that decision, really is the question. What were you thinking? What happened? Tell me the truth, and we can work it out. But we had a no surprises rule in our administration. I don't like good surprises. I don't like bad surprises. The only surprise I like is the one I get in the Cracker Jack box. If you have bad news, you should be the first person to tell me. Don't let me hear it somewhere else. Own up to it. And then back them up. Because you're the one who has to stand at that podium. You're the one who's got 6 cameras in your face. You're the one who has to be able to answer those questions, and you can only answer them if you have all of the correct and true information. You have to create an environment where your folks feel comfortable telling you the truth, not what you want to hear, not what you want to hear. That's a process. That takes time. That takes trust. Again, they know if they can trust you by how you make your decisions. And do you hold fast and hold true to the same process each and every time? As I said to the students when I was with them, when you find yourself in these tough situations, and you're going to get criticized either way you go, the first question really has to be, what's the right thing to do? And then we can talk politics, and we can talk strategy, and we can talk policy. We can talk about all of those things. Go through all of that, because you should have full knowledge and information. But at the end, the last question really should be, what's the right thing to do for the citizens? Not the politically expedient, not what's going to get me reelected, not what's going to make people happy, not what they want to hear. So it's hard, standing in an auditorium with 200, 300, 400 folks screaming and yelling about whatever they're screaming and yelling about, and somebody asks a question, you can give them the really quick, easy answer just to get off of the thing, or you can give them the true answer and have them holler at you more. People will appreciate the truth even if they don't like the answer. Now, there are some, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, they will never be happy. I get that. It's too hot, it's too cold, it's too this, it's too that. I mean, you know, it's like, all right, I mean, what do you want from me? I gave you an answer, I gave you the truth, you don't like it. It's the way it goes. Lastly, I want to talk about citizenship. It appears that the teaching of citizenship has clearly been on the decline in our elementary, high schools, and possibly even in some of our colleges and universities. There is something going on, clearly, and has been for some time, and I'll be the first to admit that I apparently must have missed it, that is now playing out on the biggest public stage of the world in this election cycle. Americans are very angry about a bunch of different things, upset about a bunch of different things, and are finding voice, or at least amplification, through one very large and public megaphone that is fermenting hate, violence, fear of those who don't look like us, which it's kind of hard to figure out how that could be in a nation of immigrants. And it's not good for our democracy. So we'll get through this election. I mean, it's the one really great thing about elections. They actually have an end date. This will end, this part. But for whomever wins on November 8th, they're going to have a tough job managing the United States of America and all 330 some odd million of us, given all the genies that have been released from all the bottles That stuff is not going away anytime soon. And so for the new president, for the Congress, whoever, and the balance of power and whatever happens there, issues of integrity and being open and honest with people will be more important than it's ever been. We need a serious healing in the United States of America if we expect to maintain or expand on our rightful place as the greatest nation on the planet. But something is going on in our body politic, certainly at the federal level, but we see signs of it at the state level, a little less at the city level, as once great mayor of New York City said, there really is no Democrat or Republican way of sweeping the street. Stephanie's heard me say a million times at USCM, I mean, mayors could never get away with some of the nonsense that goes on in Washington, D.C. Could you imagine if I had a press conference saying that we're going to pass a continuing resolution on whether or not we're going to continue trash service? Could you imagine, as happened in the Congress, when they said they were only going to extend funding to the Department of Homeland Security for another 3 months? Could you imagine if one of us had a press conference at 2 o'clock saying, well, let's have a debate about whether or not we should move the snow? You can't get away with that at the local level. Local level government is the only level of government that actually is working right now, because you have a reasonable expectation that when you turn your faucet on in the morning, clean water will actually come out of it. You have a reasonable expectation that your roads will be in fairly decent condition so as to not blow out a tire or break your axle. You have a reasonable expectation that if you call 911, a professional police officer or firefighter will show up. You have a reasonable expectation that swimming pools will have water in them, libraries will have books, recreation centers will have soccer balls and basketballs and all kinds of other stuff. That's what we do every day. Often taken for granted. No one's asking for a medal. But it's what we do at the local level. It is often difficult to figure out what happens at the state or the federal level. Now, I know they're doing something, and I know they show up for work every day, and I know they send us money from time to time. But the hypocrisy of some who would, for instance, cut funding for the Community Development Block Grant Program and have the audacity to then show up at a ribbon cutting for the new Senior Citizen Center that was funded with the same CDBG dollars that you just cut last week. Or those who would go to the funeral of a police officer killed in the line of duty, shot on our streets, but then refuse to help implement reasonable gun safety regulations. We have to really think about what leadership means anymore. You are not automatically a leader because you got elected. You are no smarter on Wednesday than you were on Monday. You just had a better Tuesday than anybody else. And so public service really is one of the highest callings that anyone can respond to. It is the daily opportunity to know that you could actually have a positive impact on another citizen's life. To the younger people here, if you're thinking about public service, which I would encourage you to do, just a couple observations. One, pursue it. May not lifelong be your thing, but it's a good thing to have some experience in. Two, you will never make a lot of money in public service. Those who have tried usually go to jail. But it is a great experience. And there is nothing nothing like that feeling at the end of whatever that day is, knowing that someone benefited from you or your department or your agency in improving the quality of someone else's life. There's no other feeling like that. And the opportunity you have to do that, the opportunity for a great education here at Maxwell and at Syracuse, and to take on these challenges. We need the highest quality people to go into public service, spend some time, take on these challenges, fix the things that are broken, have reasonable dialogue, have reasonable disagreements. But at the end of the day, make a commitment to yourself that the goal is to actually get something done. Now, at home, we call that GSD. In private, we switch out one of the words. But this is being recorded. But you know what I mean. And we have a lot of fun in public service, and there are a lot of challenges. You won't always have all the resources that you might have in the private sector. I already talked about money and those kinds of issues. But to be able to walk down the street or drive down the street and look at something or look at an area or be in a place where you were maybe 5 years ago and know that's there because of something I did. That's better because of something we did together. And years from now, it will be true that you did, in fact, turn your city over better and more beautiful than you found it. Thank you. Are we on time?
Thank you, Mayor Nutter. And we have a good chunk of time for your questions. And what we'll do here, I don't know, Mayor, if you want
Yeah.
to take them sitting down or stay at the podium,
No,
it's
I'll
up
stay.
to you.
Yeah,
Okay. We've got microphones here going around. What I'd like to do is call on two people at a time and get the microphones to them, and then we'll take another set of two. So hands up. We have Minch here, and we'll take this woman here. This will be our first two questions, and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Mine's a very quick question. When are you going to run for president?
Not happening, but thank you, thank you. No, I'm good. I'm having fun. I'm trying to get someone else elect the president, though. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for being here and sharing this time with us, but especially for the inspirational words.
Oh, thank you.
And I think you ought to hang on to those business cards that you have.
Yeah.
Because I think, there are a number of us that would be honored to have one of those business cards.
Well, thank you. And I did bring a few with me. I wasn't sure how many people were going to be here. I'm just glad anyone showed up, quite frankly. But I did bring some.
But you've talked about the Athenian Oath, and I think that really means something to all of us. And passing the city on, greater and more beautiful than we've inherited it. A terrific commitment that I think we're all prepared to make. But you talked about the decisions, some are right and some are expedient.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a whole range, isn't
Yeah.
there, that are in the
in
middle
between,
where we just
yeah.
don't have the answers.
Yeah.
So I know that you've done a tremendous amount in Philadelphia to address this question of violence in our cities.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the things that is really affecting our cities and challenging all of us,
Yeah.
I think, is the violence that we see, especially among African-American males and young people, and the effect it's having on our communities.
Sure.
So could you talk a little bit about how to address that, and how to tie that in with the goals of
Sure.
the Athenian Oath?
So, I think the two greatest challenges in public policy, again, at least at the local level, are public safety and public education. And for me, they're really tied together. If we did really well on one, we'd actually affect the other. And I can go into more details. You know, I'm born, raised, educated, created all my trouble in Philadelphia, so it's the only place that I've lived. And so when I think about the levels of violence, about 75% of our homicide victims, black men, about 80% of the folks that we arrest for homicide, black men. As an African American, I mean, it is that much more impactful to me. And at the same time, you know, I was very vocal about violence in Philadelphia and across the nation, especially as I rose up through the ranks at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. It is, you know, obviously a little easier for an African American to talk about some of these issues than it is for someone who is not. Having said that, people at home, many in the African American community, would be upset with me when I would talk about the levels of violence in our community. And what I said was, you know, I'll stop talking about it when you all stop shooting each other. Otherwise, I took an oath, and my job is to make sure that people are safe. So, you know, I think a combination of smart policing, use of technology, constant awareness raising, diversion, trying to give our kids, young people, as many options and opportunities to do something else, while at the same time reinforcing on a pretty regular basis that crime and violence would not be tolerated. And I think we took some innovative steps. I was fortunate to have a really great police commissioner in Charles Ramsey, who I think inspired and re-inspired the officers on the force. We did foot patrols in a variety of high crime areas and saw some productivity there. Aggressive pursuit of illegal weapons on the streets of our city. Increased cooperation from our citizens to give us information about folks. Text tip hotlines, outdoor video surveillance, a variety of other tools and mechanisms. Unfortunately, we are seeing a little bit of an uptick. The big statistic for me in my time, a 31% reduction in homicides over my 8-year tenure, and some of the lowest levels since the 1960s in Philadelphia. On the other hand, you know, 2015, 270 people murdered. That's nothing really to be proud about. Every life is precious, and I'm not making a judgment about who did what to whom. We lost someone, and they were a citizen. That is someone's brother, sister, father, you know, mother, daughter, son. But I think we have to talk about it. And what I have done, working with Mayor Mitch Landrieu from New Orleans, is we created an organization called Cities United, which is supported by Casey Family Programs. I think now about 80 some odd mayors have signed on. This is about violence reduction specifically in the African American community for men and boys. And to create an environment where mayors, regardless of color, regardless of their constituency, can talk about these issues in a pretty safe environment, get technical support and assistance to try to deal with these kinds of issues. But you know, I'll be the first to say it is not easy to take it on, and the public wants us to do something about it, but in some communities they just don't want us to talk about it. And I just took the very opposite position, and yeah, it upset some folks, but I got more upset when I lost people on the street. So again, in the choice between, you know, I'm going to get slammed either way, and I'm just going to kind of do the right thing. The politics of policing, you know, and what we've seen over the last, you know, 2-3 years with officer-involved shootings, primarily white officers, African-American males, has damaged severely trust between communities of color and police. The reality is that both sides, if you will, need each other. The African-American community wants to be safe, like everyone else, and they want good police officers. And officers want to be safe, and they want to go home as well. There is an increased need for training and supervision of the officers out on the street, and a review of all policing policies, especially use of force, that your firearm is not your first choice, but that you're looking at something else. We brought in the Department of Justice to look at our officer-involved shootings and use of force policies. We asked them to come in and review us and tell us what we weren't doing right. It's been helpful. Yes, ma'am. Did your microphone go away? Yeah. Right. Oh, right. You asked me the. Right, okay. It wasn't really a question. Yes. I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank
Yes.
you so much for
Hi.
your talk. I was interested, since you said you started at Wharton, which is a school of finance. Now
No,
you're
I started in engineering. I finished at
sorry,
Wharton. Yeah.
yes. You received your training in finance, and now you're teaching at a school of public service. And I'm curious, with respect to leadership, with respect to what you said about what's the right thing to do and get stuff done, if you could speak a little bit about the difference and the different advantages and disadvantages to students receiving training in those two environments,
The finance and
and now in a school of public affairs.
yeah.
Right answer in this context.
Yeah. I think it really is a combination of things. You will learn a lot here at Maxwell. Folks learn a lot at Penn and Wharton and all those places. I think it was. It'll come to me, but I know I know the quote. What is it? Never let your schooling interfere with your education. I think it's Mark Twain. You'll learn a bunch of things here, but I would strongly encourage you again. That practical knowledge and education out in whatever we call the world will be very, very helpful. It's invaluable.
She needs to tell you something.
Oh,
I'm on the faculty.
okay. So, the training that you're giving to students is invaluable to...
That's why I said there's a right answer.
What is...
That's why I said there's a right answer.
Yeah, the training you're giving to the students is incredibly valuable to their future, and you should encourage them to get practical knowledge. They're really, so I said to the students that I met with earlier, quite honestly, I'm just excited that there are schools like this, that someone actually wants to learn about citizenship and how to engage in the world and sit across the table and talk with people. We talk at each other about trying to score points, and we're not hearing each other and trying to have a better understanding. And as long as that's going on, there'll be a fair amount of gridlock at all the various levels. Again, I mean, I'm not saying everything, I mean, things aren't perfect at the local level either. And, politics, personalities, and just the pettiness that goes along with it sometimes often makes it difficult to get some things done. But there's seemingly more of an imperative, if you will, at the local level to actually make some stuff happen, as opposed to these endless political fights and debates that often, everyone's got their own set of facts now. Generally, there's only one set of, I mean, there's your opinion, my opinion, but they're facts, right? I mean, no one's disputing that water is H2O. I mean, I think we gave up on that a while ago. So, there are any number of things where people just aren't educated, and I don't mean that in any demeaning way. It's not just because whether you went here or not. They don't have any information. And where they get information, it is just often wrong. And then it gets baked into the cake, and we retreat to our corners and then come out fighting. And we're not having a true dialogue and conversation, which I know you're providing to your students. Yeah. How far in the hole was I? on how? I really thought you were a student. I'm sorry. I look like a grad student.
Mayor Nutter, thank you for being here, and you're inspiring a lot of people in this room, I think, with your talk. I have one of your former managing directors of emergency management, Liam O'Keefe, who works for me, and Liam's an exceptional person and somebody I have a high regard for, and he speaks incredibly highly of you and your leadership there. I'd love to have you elaborate what your philosophy is and how you approached leadership when it came to your 17 city council members and, you know, the politics involved with them, and some of them wanting your job, and,
Yeah.
you know, just pandering to particular groups, and you
Yeah.
talking about, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself that question, you know, what's the right thing to do here?
Yeah, yeah. So, I can say at least, I've seen both sides of this. 14 and a half years on city council and 8 as mayor. The one thing, it's kind of funny now. So I did a whole bunch of stuff. I was a very active legislator, very active. And in 2003, in Philadelphia, it was just the anniversary, if you will, was just a couple weeks ago. But I think it was October 7th, 2003, it was revealed that there was a listening device found in the office of the mayor. '03 was the election year, and it was the incumbent mayor at the time, running in the general election a month before the election, Republican opponent who had been, this was a rematch from the '99 race, which was very close. There was an immediate assumption that there must have been some skullduggery from the opponent's camp until, surprisingly, about a day or so later, the FBI, a very loquacious, outward-facing, very verbose organization, the FBI, and I'm good with the FBI, but, I mean, they're not usually the most informative agency around. The FBI announced that, no, it was not the political campaign of the opposition. It was us. They had gone to a federal judge and got an order signed that they could put a listening device in the mayor's office because they believed there was a criminal activity taking place in that office. It was, for me, one of the worst moments as a citizen and as a public employee. It was embarrassing. And so for the bulk of the 2007 election, so it was around that time that I decided and really started thinking about the prospect of running for mayor. I had, 11 years or so. I was in my late 40s. Every mayor who's run for re-election in Philadelphia has been re-elected, so it's a 4-year term and it's a 2-term limit, but I mean, it's really kind of an 8-year term. And I had to make a decision, a personal decision, was I going to sit on the floor of city council for another 8 years and kind of whine and bitch and moan and groan about whatever the mayor was or wasn't doing? Or was I going to get off the sidelines, put myself out there, and run? And ultimately, of course, I decided, only one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to win, great, or I'm going to lose, and I'm out of office because I had to resign, and I'll go and triple my salary and never go to another damn community meeting in my life. So, I mean, either way, I was good. But the embarrassment of that matter and the subsequent 20 or so people, mayor was never charged with anything, but 20 or so people indicted, some arrested, some went to jail, including the mayor's top fundraiser and the city treasurer, who just got out last year, was a stain on the entire city, let alone all of the public employees. And I decided then that we were going to fix this place. Out of that crisis, was able to put in place a board of ethics approved by the voters, campaign finance reform, contract reform, and a variety of other measures. I say all that to say, I then become mayor. And we're working on whatever we're working on, and my people tell me, well, we have to do X, Y, and Z, and it has to be done A, B, C way. And I'm like, well, why do we have to do it that way? And they said, well, a couple of years ago, there was this really brilliant member of city council who pushed through all these bills and pieces of legislation to prevent corruption in the government. You wonder who that was? So a lot of my own stuff came back to kind of haunt me. in any event, city council, you know, look, they get elected like everybody else. They're an independent body. They're, you know, 17 princes of their empire or whatever. Everybody wants something, and it's the daily give and take of, you know, what do you want? What is this about? Is this serious? Is this real? Are you just messing with me? You know, we have fewer members. I mean, a lot of members would like to be mayor, but as I said, you have to resign your job to run. So I don't know about the city council here in Syracuse, but the city council job back at home, $129,000 a year, a car, a parking space, really great health care plan, and unless you get indicted and convicted in the same year, you can pretty much have that job forever. So a lot of them are not interested in resigning on the chance that they might possibly become mayor. But they like making noise and doing their thing, and they try to hold you up and hold you hostage. So, you know, look, there are some who are going to be friends, there are some who are frenemies, and there are just some who are just going to be anti all the time. The math is pretty simple. 17 members, 9 votes to pass a bill, 12 votes to override a veto, 6 votes to sustain one. You don't have to be that good at math to be good, successful in this job. So you work with them. You know, what do you want? Here's what I want. Can we do something together? Blah, blah, blah. Sometimes they're for you, sometimes they're against you. You can't take it personally unless it's like personal. You know, you try to do your best to get stuff done. I got everything I wanted with the exception of 2 really big things. We put forward the sugar-sweetened beverage tax 2 times. Never called it for a vote because we didn't have the votes. And I didn't want the beverage industry to win. I tried to sell our gas works. We're the largest city in America that owns a gas company. We've had it for probably 180 years now. It's time to get out of that business. And they were too scared politically to do it. Some of them. So, other than that, I mean, bumps and bruises, you get some, I get some, blah, blah, blah. Life goes on.
Two folks right here shot their hands up right away. Back microphone.
Thank you, Mayor. Very, very interesting remarks. I'd like to follow up on something you mentioned about how to elicit contrarian views as you sit in executive session with your colleagues in city government. And you talked about the importance of telling the truth and the importance of trust and also the importance of maybe a rational or predictable decision-making process. Could you expand a little bit on that, about how you see executive leadership creating an environment where you get a multitude of views and information before you make your decision?
Sure. So the top people in my administration, there were 11 folks, all the deputy mayors and the other cabinet officers, and myself. We met weekly, you know, with an agenda and then some free conversation, hey, what's going on, catch up, all that kind of stuff. The door was closed, and I think other than just some kind of general rules about decorum and respect, say whatever you want. I want to hear your view, and you don't have to agree with me. As long as we understand up front, when all is said and done, it's my decision to make. I ran. I got elected. I got to make the call. Some you like, some you won't like, but done respectfully, right? And we would go around the table, and some people had opinions about whatever, and sometimes people didn't have an opinion, and I would ask them, what do you think about this? You know, it's your call. You know, it's not my world, it's not my thing, or I don't have a strong opinion about it one way or the other. But you have to have, in that closed-door environment, you have to have a level of trust and respect for their opinions. And they have to know that you trust and respect and will listen to their opinions. In those 8 years, for whatever decisions we made, and they were not always unanimous, never, ever once did anyone ever know who was for that decision, who was against that decision. It stayed in that room, and when that door opened up, we're all together. That's the deal. And so that mutual respect between and amongst each other allowed people, I think, the opportunity to speak freely, say whatever they wanted, you know, to me, and kind of go from there. Now, again, I know for a fact that there were other meetings after that meeting or other conversations, about whatever we had decided. And if folks really felt strongly about it, they would usually, it took me a little while to figure this out, but they'd usually have either the chief of staff come and talk to me privately, or if it was a really big issue, the chief of staff and our city attorney come and talk to me privately to help me get to maybe a different place in my thinking about whatever decision I was about to make, if they really felt strongly about it. And so I would always say, mayor's tough job. The really toughest job in this work is the chief of staff. Because to keep a staff excited, engaged, involved, enthused, and manage the mayor. No disrespect to my good friend down here. We are difficult to manage. Got 25 different ideas a day, all of which we believe are fantastic and wonderful, and really just want someone to implement immediately, which is impractical. And half of the ideas, at least for me, were probably not practical at all. But you need someone in that job who, again, you trust. And I was just out with my former chief of staff last night, who, I should mention, by the way, is a Syracuse grad, Syracuse Law School grad. We went to Penn together, undergrad, and he's a Syracuse Law School grad. You need someone who can also be truthful and honest with you that you're going to listen to. So, for instance, I want to do whatever. And the team would say, you got to go and talk to him. He can't. He can't do that. He can't say that. You got to talk to him. Calm him down. And he would. And then there were other occasions where I didn't want to do what they were recommending. And I'm the most flowery language you could imagine. I'm not doing it. Hell with that. So-and-so's an idiot. That's stupid. No way in the world I'm doing that. Forget it. Not going to happen. And the chief would come and say, okay, I heard all that. It's very interesting. You got 15 minutes to get yourself together, and then we're going to go have this press conference. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited to be here today for this announcement. I've been waiting for this moment to talk with you about whatever. Because you don't just get to do the things that you want to do. You do what you have to do. And every day is not going to be the most joyful day. So it's about trust. Thank you. Sure. There was
just
You'll have the last question. Go ahead.
just quickly. Throughout the years, I've heard from people who have been in high positions that you always do the right thing. Recently, I was at the UN, and I was working with one of the assistants to the Secretary General, and the last thing he told me was just always remember to do the right thing. But when were you faced in a situation where doing the right thing was either controversial or not expedient at the time? How do you deal with it?
I have a perfect example for you. So I came in office in January of 2008. As we now all know, the Great Recession started in December of 2007, but we didn't know that at the time until the feds told us, right? So in September of 2008, I announced that, so because of a previous fiscal crisis, we have a financial oversight agency, state created, that requires that every year we put forward a 5-year plan. And every year in that 5-year plan has to be balanced. It is a complete pain on the one hand, but it's tremendous from a discipline standpoint because you can't do hocus pocus and smoke and mirrors kind of stuff because otherwise they won't approve it, right? So I announced in September of 2008 that we had at least a $450 million 5-year plan deficit. In October, I had to revise that and say that it was 650 to 850. In November, 2 days after then Senator Barack Obama was elected as President of the United States, 2 days later, I announced on live television that the city of Philadelphia had a $1 billion 5-year plan deficit. People thought we were about the dumbest folks who had ever come into office, and were ready to, kind of run us out. Until the following, until they saw all the banks going and other agencies, et cetera. Right. So we do that. My next budget, I think it was March, we announced more cuts that we were going to have to implement, and every department and agency had to take a cut. Not the same cut, but some cut. And we'd already announced I was reducing my salary and top staff. We did all that stuff first go round to close the billion-dollar hole because another one opened up. Over in the library side of the government, the library folks, we told them they had to give us a plan to save $8 million. Their proposal was that we close 11 libraries. We have 54 libraries in Philadelphia. We have one of the highest per capita libraries, and number of libraries in the country. There was a lot of opposition internally to that. There was a lot of back and forth. Two things. One, rookie mistake. It was early in my second year, because I was adhering to a fundamental principle that we had said everyone had to take a cut. And if police are taking a cut, and fire is taking a cut, and other agencies and departments, then libraries had to take a cut, and that was the plan that was put forward. We put that forward. Now, in 2005, along with a fellow council member, I was recognized by the American Library Association as Public Official of the Year. Love libraries, still carry a library card, even though you don't need one because everything's electronic. But, so that's my history. But I announced that. People went berserk. City Council filed a lawsuit saying that I didn't have the authority to do that, based on some law that had been passed a whole bunch of years ago that no one ever paid attention to. We had a preliminary injunction against us, which we did not appeal. The absolute worst decision that I ever made in 22 and a half years of public service was that one. And because we weren't allowed to close the libraries, and we still needed to save the $8 million, I told the team, go back, figure out something else, which they did, which did not involve closing libraries, and we saved the $8 million anyway. There are people in Philadelphia still pissed with me today. And worse, some still believe that we actually closed libraries. Which the team wouldn't allow me to say, but I wanted to say in public one day, if you ever went to one of our libraries, you would know that they were still open. But that was one of those talks, you know. But the best lesson I ever learned was out of that mistake decision, which I've publicly apologized for numerous times. Because every tough, critical decision I had to make after that one, what I learned was it wasn't a mistake to ask for the $8 million in cuts. The mistake was not asking enough questions, was not pushing the team to give me more options. That was the mistake. And I used that experience for all the rest of my time in every other big decision that I had to make. Give me more options, give me more scenarios, show me another way. Let's try to do this differently. And I benefited from that, but I paid a pretty decent price for it. Yeah, worst decision ever.
Let me say two things by way of conclusion. The first is that we have a reception upstairs on the second floor in the Strasser Commons area. Please all come up there for refreshments and food and to continue the conversation that we started here today. The second thing I want to say, Mayor Nutter, to you is, I think I'm speaking for all of us, not only did we value and appreciate the inspiration that you gave to us here today, I think we needed it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.